Sometimes the greatest acts of strength, they can look a lot like weakness to the outside world. Today we're diving into a powerful legend from Odisha that's all about that. A story of devotion, a stinging insult, and a divine response that didn't come from the heavens, but from a dusty road.
All right, so to really get this story, there's one key thing you have to understand. In this particular kingdom, the king wasn't the top dog. Not really. His true title was Rauta, which means he was the #1 servant of the god Jagannath. His power didn't come from his crown, it came from his service. And that's the heart of our story. What happens when this incredible act of devotion is seen by someone else as, well, shameful? That's the moment a simple ritual gets twisted into a profound insult, kicking off one heck of a divine journey.
So, let's meet our king, Purushottama Deva. For him, being the Rauta wasn't just some fancy title. No, his whole identity was wrapped up in this one incredibly important sacred ritual that he performed every single year.
And this ritual, it's really something else. Picture this. It's the massive Ratha Yatra festival. Thousands of people are there. And the king, he gets off his throne, picks up a golden broom, and starts sweeping the road for Lord Jagannath's chariot. It's this incredible symbol, right? That in the eyes of God, even a king is just a humble servant.
But you know how it is. What one person sees as a beautiful act of faith, someone else might see completely differently. And in this case, that misunderstanding is about to light a fire that will change everything. Okay, so into this very scene walks an emissary from a whole other kingdom, Kanchi. He's there on pretty important business, to finalize a marriage between his princess and King Purushottama, and he just happens to show up at the exact moment the king is doing his sweeping ritual.
And, well, you can probably guess what happens. The emissary is just confused. He doesn't see a sacred duty. He sees a king acting like a common street sweeper. So he hurries back home and basically reports, "You will not believe what their king does for a living." The king of Kanchi's reaction is swift and brutal. Based on this one report, he sends back this very public, incredibly insulting message. He says, and I'm quoting the sentiment here, "I will not give my daughter to a king who sweeps roads, like a chandala," which is a word for an untouchable. I mean, wow, it's about as offensive as he can get. And you've got to understand, this isn't just name-calling. This is a massive attack on 3 different levels. First, you're saying the king isn't fit to be a king. Second, you're mocking his personal faith. But the biggest one, you're calling the sacred service to his god, Lord Jagannath, shameful. You're basically insulting the god himself.
So King Purushottama is just devastated. Not because his ego is bruised, but because the holy ritual for his lord has been dragged through the mud. But his response isn't what you'd expect, and it's what opens the door for something truly divine.
So he doesn't call his generals, he doesn't immediately declare war for revenge. Nope. Instead, he just goes to the temple. He stands there, silently, in front of his god. Not as a king demanding justice, but just as a servant whose act of loyalty was just called a disgrace. And in that silence, the legend says he felt this promise, this quiet assurance from his god, something along the lines of, "The road you walked for me, I will now walk with you." And right there, that's the real start of the war, the Kanchi Abhijan. It began not with a king's rage, but with a god's vow. This is just a perfect response, isn't it? The insult was, "Your king is a sweeper," and the divine answer is, "Okay, you think walking on a dusty road is shameful? Watch me do it." And so the story goes, the 2 gods themselves, Jagannath and his brother Balabhadra, rode ahead of the entire army on a white horse and a black horse, disguised as simple soldiers. Okay, so the army is marching south, and this is where the story takes a really fascinating turn. The 2 divine soldiers, totally in disguise, have this chance encounter with a poor woman on the side of the road. And this little meeting, it's really the heart of the whole legend. So imagine this, it's hot, it's dusty, and these 2 soldiers see a woman named Monica selling curd. Just try to make ends meet. They don't look like gods, they don't look important, they just look like 2 really thirsty, tired guys. And her reaction is everything. She just gives them the curd. She doesn't haggle over the price, she doesn't ask who they are or where they're going, she just sees a basic human need, thirst, and she meets it. It's pure, simple service. So after they've had their drink, one of the soldiers hands her a ring, a pretty nice one at that, and he says, "Listen,
The king's army is right behind us. When they get here, just show this ring to the king. He'll make sure you get paid." And with that, they rode off.
Well, the war is won. The army is heading home victorious. And now, that little mystery of the two soldiers in the ring, it's about to be solved in a big way. Just as she was told, Manika waits for the king's army. She manages to get to the king himself, holds out the ring, and says, "Two of your soldiers told me to show you this to get paid for some curd I gave them."
The second the king and his court see that ring, everything stops. A total stunned silence, because they know that ring. And in that one moment, it all clicks into place. All the unexplained luck, the victories, the feeling that they were being protected on their march.
That ring, it belonged to the idol of Lord Jagannath back in the temple. The two soldiers on the road, the two thirsty men, they weren't soldiers at all. They were the gods themselves.
And this is really the punchline of the whole story, isn't it? Why her? Why do the gods reveal themselves to this one poor woman? Because her act of service was completely pure. She gave without expecting a reward. She served without knowing who they were. She trusted them without doing the math on what she might lose.
And that's really the lesson of this incredible legend. When genuine humility is mocked as weakness, the divine answer isn't a lightning bolt from the sky. It's walking right alongside you on that same dusty road. It tells us that real strength, and maybe even real divinity, isn't found in palaces and thrones. It's found in service.